Hello, right, I'm Rob Pickering. This is yet another talk about LLMs and telephones, which is now keeping us away from lunch as well. So I'm going to try and keep this brief. I think quite a lot of people in the room know me, but I've been involved in the TAD organisation and TAD hack since about 2014 when I did a WebRTC hack. But basically I'm a technical person. I'm also a company founder and latterly an advisor and investor, but I see the whole world through the lens of code and software development. So when I see a problem or I see a technology I need to evaluate, I tend to just go and write some code to figure out what is real and what is bullshit, I guess, is my take, as Alan would say it. So one of the companies that one of my companies I'm involved in, started looking at conversational AI afresh really when ChatGPT went general release at the turn of the year. And I'm going to talk about some of my experience with this. This talk title, everything moves so fast in AI. I said to Alan I would do this talk maybe about 2 months ago, and I put this talk title in, and it's the usual kind of formula for this kind of thing. You ask a kind of banal question, and then you put a controversial subtitle on it to make people actually turn up. And that was the title of the talk. Should we put LLMs on the phone? And hallucinating, waste of time, useful tool, or danger to humanity? Actually, given I'm sort of the third talk on LLMs on the telephone at this thing, and certainly, everyone else is of the view like, yeah, we're doing it, hey man. And I think that's actually right. It is just inevitable. It's kind of like if I had said yesterday, folks, should we go out for a drink tonight? Most people would be saying yes. There would be some people who had genuine reasons to say no, actually I don't want to do that, that's not a good idea, but for most of us it's a direction of travel. And I think that's where we are now with the idea of putting LLMs on the telephone. It's something that's going to happen, so how do we do it best? So I developed a new title for this talk. This is a much better title. How I learned to stop worrying and love the AI, but how do we make it safe? And you probably have to be of a certain age to even understand the illusion here. But the image wasn't generated by AI, so I claim moral high ground on that. So the case that I'm actually talking about, the thing that the use case is the hard customer service piece, right? First gen conversational AI, things like the Dialogflow Lex type stuff, where we were taking a customer on a journey. That's proven it works. It works in A2P, where we've got effectively time delayed messaging. But what I'm really talking about now are the kind of the holdouts, the areas that up to now, conversational AI really doesn't work great for. And that really is these two areas of people who can't or won't use a smartphone. So most of us, if I want to book a train ticket, I go and do it through my smartphone. And, maybe there's a little conversational AI bot that the train company puts in the corner. And I might choose to use that, but I probably won't actually, because I want to get the information and do it that way. And then the other use case, the kind of group of people who can't or won't do that, either because they don't have a smartphone or aren't au fait with the technology to use one of those screen-based technologies. That's actually quite a vulnerable community. So within that are folks who, for all sorts of reasons, aren't going to be able to engage in lots of aspects of society because of that, and we need to take a lot of care about the way that we approach that group of people and the problems they have. And I thought I loved your answer yesterday about empathy, Paul, and I think it's really dangerous when we start expanding conversational AI into some of these demographics. And then the other one is kind of this issue of, I've got a user who has tried to use the automated system and the algorithm is broken. I had to do this as a picture of the OBB customer service place at Vienna station because my online train reservation just wouldn't work. And, you know, I'm trying to take it out of the basket to make the credit card transaction go through, so I turn up. And the reason I turn up there to do that is because there's a human being behind the counter who's got a pass key to, you know, they can make reservations on any train. They don't need to conform to the algorithm. So the other reason that we tend to use telephone calls in customer service is to get hold of a human being who can kind of get around the system for us. And they're really hard use cases for AI. So we're setting a high bar here, high objective. So where I came from was trying to build one of these systems using first-gen conversational tools, Dialogflow in this case. And I thought, well, this is going to be really easy. We can make this accessible to SMEs. We can produce a tool that allows them to build a chatbot. If you want to go find it, there's a talk about it in TAD Summit 2020. It was a pandemic-related thing. We can teach people in small charities, small organisations to build a chatbot where the results come out in a Google Sheet, and you know, we'll give it away because it's a pandemic, and afterwards we'll charge like 10 quid a month, and this is really easy. Trouble is, we found the onboarding was taking about half a day, so you can't physically go and spend half a day in front of someone to onboard them on something that you're going to charge, you know, £10, €10, $10 a month for. So, you know, that's kind of where I came from, and I sort of abandoned this sphere of endeavour, if I'm honest, at that point, because it's kind of like, you know, the folks who are doing this at a mid-tier and charging tens of thousands of consultancy to build a chatbot, they're right, it takes that much effort, where we stand at the moment. And I'm not going to bother you with the video there. So I came back, circled back to this, start of this year. Can we just use ChatGPT for all of this? I don't know, let's give it a go. So the obvious choice for building a platform, you know the thing about writing code to see if things actually are what they say they are or everyone else says they are. So I thought, let's choose a platform and do this. Jambones was the obvious choice. It's open source. It had got a lot of instrumentation already in it. It had got APIs to do a lot of this. I could just piggyback on the, what is it, Dave, about 10 speech-to-text engines or whatever that are supported in Jambones. So I could pretty quickly hook up to its APIs, hook up to the OpenAI API, and produce something that actually works. So I thought, okay, let's do that. Let's give it a go. It can't be as hard as people say, right? And then moving it on a bit, I wanted to play with different models. So added ChatGPT 4, 3.5, Google Palm 2. Need to actually add Llama to this mix. Haven't done so yet, but I think there might be some interesting things that come out of that. Write it as a service. All this is on GitHub, by the way. I'll show you the links later. Expose an API, and the API is really simple. You just do a post with your agent prompt. The API comes back and gives you a phone number out of the pool, and it was deliberately designed for playing with, so the phone number isn't persistent. It's out of a pool inside Jambones. You post your prompt, you get a phone number back, you make a phone call, and you've got an agent there that just works. So there's also some stuff in the API to update it mid-call, either across the agent or for an individual call, and I'll come back to why that's useful in a second. So that's the API taken care of. But APIs aren't really useful for people to evaluate stuff, so we just put a bit of a React front end on it. And the React front end allows someone to just go to a website. Again, there's a link there, I think, at llm.applesa.com. You can go there. Just because it's using some expensive resources, you have to register, but you register with an email address. And you can start playing with putting prompts into LLMs, making phone calls to them, and seeing what happens. So what does happen? I had this kind of wacky idea of, let's see what happens if we connect up two different agents with two different prompts to take on two different roles. And it's like one of these things where you wake up in the morning at 5 a.m. and you think, wow, that's a really good idea. So tried to go back to sleep, but no, that didn't work. So I just wrote a couple of prompts and did it, and this was the outcome.
How can I assist you today?
Hello, I need to order some donuts.
Hi there. Thank you for for calling Rob's Donuts. I'd be happy to help you with your order. How many donuts would you like to order?
Hello, I need to order some donuts. I sell on average 45 donuts a day. What is the best price you can offer me?
You notice the cat face sounds in the background.
Great.
I thought I would add
Selling
some
an
more
average
to
of
that.
45 donuts is fantastic. Let me calculate the best price for you. Based on our cost price, I can offer you a special price of 40 pence per donut. So for 45 donuts, the total would be £18. How does that sound to you?
Thank you for the offer, but I'm afraid that price is too high for me. I need to maintain a margin of 75% on my purchase price in order to make a profit. Can you offer a lower price?
I understand your need to maintain a good profit margin. Let me see what I can do for you. Considering your desired margin of 75%, I can offer you a discounted price of 35 pence per donut. This would make the total for 45 donuts £15.75. Would that price work better for you?
Thank you for considering my margin requirement. The price of £35 per day for 45 donuts sounds more
Did you
reasonable.
hear that Did you hear that someone went a little bit wrong there? What actually went wrong there was that. That was a really interesting exchange, right? And if those two, and they do actually conclude their negotiations, so they go around in further loops. I'm not going to waste 10 minutes of your time going around that, but they do actually converge on a price that are within the parameters that were both given in the end. What actually happened there was an error in the speech to text where the pence was missing. So the restaurant owner misunderstood the 35 pence a donut and understood it as £35 for a batch of 45 donuts a day, and then got very confused. Sorry, I use words like understand and confuse. I should not use those words because there's no understanding and there's nothing to be confused. They're following a pattern. I thought that was quite interesting, and we'll talk about how we get around things like that and constrain them by the laws of universe and maths and things. But just in case you're sort of interested, that's the prompt that the restaurant owner was running. So this is not. This is not hard. I think that's kind of interesting. That I think that whole thing took me, I don't know, about 25 minutes from start of an idea to writing two prompts to having these two things talk to each other. And I think one of those was GPT 3.5, the other was GPT 4. And you can hear from the latency which one is GPT 4 if you listen carefully, because GPT does introduce the latency, particularly the big models. So, in some ways, let's just connect LLMs to telephone systems and we'll write prompts and then that's the whole of conversational AI done and dusted, right? No. Prompting is a trap. It's a trap because a prompt isn't code. It isn't even instructions. So we write this thing which we think we're giving the LLM instructions. We're not giving it instructions. We're initializing it with some state. And we're hoping that the initialization with that state, when it's combined with further user input, will produce something sensible. But all the same, I think so long as we bear in mind that limitation, we can actually do some useful stuff with this, right? We have got to acknowledge the problems, and here for me are the four. There are lots of problems with large language models and AI around power consumption and things, but they're big meta in terms of the English word problems that we will solve. But the main ones that actually cause us concern in a conversational AI world are hallucination, which is this idea that somehow the agent hallucinates. I mean, what it's actually doing is, because it's random and generative, sometimes the random does things that we don't expect. And then there's a special case really of hallucination, which is prompt injection. And this is basically taking advantage of the fact that this is just operating on tokens with a knowledge of how it works to make the LLM do things that the person who wrote the prompt didn't intend it to do. And that's a huge problem if you give your AI-based agent any kind of agency. You know, if you're going to allow it access to bank accounts and there's a kind of prompt injection way of transferring money or something like that, the user didn't intend by, you know, kind of injecting something in the audio of the telephone conversation, that's a really bad thing to do, right? So, you know, the kind of solution to both of these things actually is to contain the AI and effectively atomically encapsulate each of those transactions within a single prompt, then take the output and feed it into logic. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. There's also another issue that I think you see in all demos around LLMs. The latency is too long right now, you know, unless you're doing really tight integration between the speech to text and, you know, with OpenAI you're running a model in some data center. Who knows where the data center is, but you've got a lot of latency to the data center. You've got a lot of latency until you get your prompt executed on a GPU, and then you've got a good bit coming back, and then you've got your end-to-end speech-to-text and text-to-speech latency. So it's really quite hard work to get that down to a level that a human perceives as a natural conversation. But there are some things we can do there, and again, I'll go into that in a second. And you know, the other big issue around all this stuff is the privacy of it. If we're dealing with sensitive conversation, the fact that that's going off to a GPU and an OpenAI data center or a Google data center may not be something that we can do legally or morally, and that's certainly something that we have to consider. But crucially, you know, this issue of hallucination and prompt injection, there is an easy solution to this, and that's to use gatekeeping to control the amount of agency that each individual kind of LLM run has. Effectively, you build this into the API so that what you effectively do is you set up an initial prompt, and that gives you the initial intent detection. And then once you've detected an intent, you kick things back into a gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper then effectively updates the prompt. It could be using the same engine or a different one, but effectively kicks you into a different context to do the work. And the crucial thing really here is this diagram, where our gatekeeper logic is the thing which really controls the agency. Now, this doesn't do a lot for my problem of the system won't give me a seat reservation because it's against its rules, but you're a human, you can override that. But the crucial thing going on here is that each of these intents, or each of these LLM prompts, think of these as an LLM prompt actually, gets to talk directly to the user, but it's using a set of parameters that have been designed for the job that it's doing. And what it effectively does at the end of its intent detection is it kicks the whole process back into the gatekeeper. And the gatekeeper is the only thing that actually has direct access to the customer data. So if you think about something like a banking transaction where a customer comes in and says, yeah, I want to transfer some money. Certainly, sir, I need to authenticate you in doing that. So, you know, the last thing you do is tell the LLM what authentication, whether it's phrases or words or whatever they're matching against, because the LLM is, well, it's not even stupid, it's a state machine, and it's a state. It can kick some of that state back to the user. You just have to accept that anything that's sitting within the domain of that LLM could possibly be exposed by a prompt injection attack or whatever. So you don't do that. You have the LLM effectively control the conversation, but then when it's extracted, what it is pretty sure is the auth token from the user. You hand that to the gatekeeper, and then the gatekeeper in code authenticates that against the database. So, you know, even if I manage to do a prompt injection here on my auth prompt, it doesn't matter. And there are various layers to this, like you can have the LLM in the auth controller effectively be able to say to the gatekeeper, you know, is this authorized to kick me into another context? And the gatekeeper says, well, you know, maybe the user gave an answer which wasn't correct, but it wasn't incorrect. So, you know, go back and ask them for a more general, here's a hint, to go and ask them for a more specific answer. You know, if it's asking you, where were you born? And you give I don't know, the county, and actually the answer on your set of answers is the town, then you can go back with an answer from the gatekeeper logic that says, you know, that answer wasn't right. And actually gatekeeper logic can be used in an entirely different LLM, but within its prompting, with tight control over what inputs it's getting to effectively try and work out if there's a relationship between the auth answer that was given and what it has. And then obviously on the way out of each of these, you then the gatekeeper logic decides whether to accept what the LLM thinks it's found out about the conversation. And that basically is a way that I think you can quite reasonably do safe large language models on the end of telephones to do some really quite astonishing things. You know, the ability of a large language model to determine a customer intent and to get information from a conversation is you know, it is actually incredible for something which is a computer system. It's something we're not used to being able to gain those kind of insights from conversation, but just accepting that because that kind of insight can be gained by what is basically operating on data, we can just give it agency to do what the heck it wants, is absolutely guaranteed to be disastrous. So that's pretty much my talk. You know, using LLMs in automated phone conversations can very definitely be service enhancing. It's certainly something that I think we've proved just through this code and agent is entirely possible. It does need very careful design to harness the language recognition strength of the models, whilst containing their non-deterministic properties. And you know, I kind of think that solving these implementation issues with the best practice open source repo seems like quite a good idea, which is why we developed this and released it. So if you know you also think that's interesting, then come and join us in doing that. There's a bunch of links and contact info. The GitHub for the repo, the LLM agent, is at the top of there. To try it out, you can just go to it, go to llm.applicé.com, register, type in a prompt. It'll give you a UK phone number, I'm afraid. There's only a pool of about 30 or 40, so if you know the 10,000 people watching this Town Hat live stream all go and hit that, then everything will probably collapse horribly. Just try again in 10 minutes. And the API documentation is there on llm.applicé.com/API. My contact info is there. I'm Rob from Applicé. That's rob@applicé.com. There's a contact form there, and there's a LinkedIn QR code if you do LinkedIn. Questions?
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. Any questions? Yeah, let me just grab the mic. It's okay. Hello. Just speak.
Hello. Hey, so just an exploratory question really around agent-to-agent negotiations there. I'm just fascinated by how that might evolve, that particular part of the whole kind of LLM framework. Like, how do you think that might move?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious that the way it's going to move, that there's a vast amount of manpower goes into selling people things and procuring things, right, on a commercial level. And on a personal level, you know, there's a great deal of attention span goes into life management. It seems pretty obvious to me that a lot of that can be automated away with this kind of agent. I think the harm is, you know, as I showed in that demonstration, LLMs know how to interact with each other. They don't actually do strategy or maths. So your strategy and maths need to be in that gatekeeper function. I mean, those two LLMs actually, when they were talking to each other, they arrived at a price point even after that bit of confusion, which was within both their parameters. So the buyer was told they had to have 75% margin on a sell price of £2, and the seller was told, you know, a really complicated variable cost model where it was, you know, £14 a delivery plus 14p a donut or something like that. So it was volume sensitive, and somehow, you know, through the power of LLMs to see similar patterns, they kind of arrived at something. But there's no way on this planet you would ever trust an LLM to do maths and work out, you know, whether you were getting the best mortgage deal for the next 25 5 years, you would need at least some coded understanding of the maths there. But this is a direction of travel. So much human endeavour is spent interacting with bureaucracy pointlessly or being bureaucracy pointlessly that, there's going to be a lot of money in this.
Cool, excellent answer. Any more questions? Yeah, just hang a second, Roman.
It's more general question. Is is it a good thing to give a decision to an LLM? I mean, in the end, negotiation is doing decision. So, is it a good thing for us as a species?
It could be profitable.
Yeah, there are some. I mean, this is a real developing area of ethics, of technology. There are some fantastic books on this where people are starting to think about it. I think it doesn't matter because you and I can stand here and say it isn't a good idea. Economically, it's transformational and it will happen. Loads of people...
Even decision, not only the interface, but also the decision making.
You think that doesn't already happen? When you get a car insurance quote, do you think a human being is working out how much to charge you? An AI has figured out what your risk is for where you live and where your car is parked. So the precedent is there. This is going to accelerate at breathtaking speed, and that's, this whole danger of AI thing. There was the big kind of thing that happened a few months ago, where there was a pronouncement that we should be really scared of extinction risks. Well, maybe, but I think what we should be really, really scared about is just a really high-speed, pervasive move into AIs making decisions that can't be explained. Because there are some really interesting harms that will come out of that. That's my personal take, but I'm a technologist, not a philosopher, but it is based on the technology that I've played with and the way that I see it being used.
But you could equally argue, trying to understand a lot of decisions humans make are equally perplexing.
I mean, that's interestingly true, and we did that customer service demo of the customer service agent who's got absolute ability to override everything. I queued for 20 minutes with my little numbered ticket at the ticket office, and the guy gave me a reservation. I picked it up and I walked out. I'm trying to read the ticket in German because I just about read German. And as I walked away from the desk, I realised he'd given me a ticket in the wrong class. He'd given me a reservation in the wrong class for my ticket, so I had to rush back to the desk before he pressed the next number button and explain that. So, whenever you give anything, the best thing to do, and, as a computer scientist, I hate this, is write the algorithms right in the first place, and then it doesn't matter what the interface is, But if we're going to give unconstrained choice to these things, it's going to be interesting, and humans screw up just as badly.
Exactly. Anything else? Just hang a sec, so...
Do you think we're close, or maybe already have the capabilities to have a conversation where one of the callers, for example, talks past the endpoint detection, and or maybe interrupts the answer from the other person, because now both speakers in the demo, just now you have two people who wait till the end and then politely answer on the full reply of the previous person. Do you see any progress, maybe some other demos from other companies, where they have the possibility to interrupt and continue?
That's a really good question, actually. And when I set up some of these demos, it's perfectly possible for the agents to get into a loop where they're both interrupting each other because they get out of sync. It's not a solved problem yet, but it's a totally solvable problem. This is not, these are not hard problems to solve. I mean, that's one of the reasons I think we should solve it once in one big open source repo, just like we do other stuff. We've solved how to do SIP. I mean, God, if we can do SIP, we can do by having open source repos that do them very well. And that will be my claim. Let's get the safety and the efficiency of this thing sorted out somewhere in open source, because that's the way that computer science moves forward, right?
Absolutely agree. I mean, we're sort of in this political phase where there's a lot of very rich billionaires that want to control the technology, hence fear and regulation, because as soon as you regulate, you stifle innovation and kill off open source. Anyway, any other questions? If not, go for it.
Oops. Yeah, I was also interested in the little bot-to-bot thing you did, which is kind of a real thing because I've got several people trying to build a service on Jambones that's based on navigating an IVR so you can talk to a person. So you have a bot that essentially is going to do that for you. But as you kind of get into that bot to bot, the question is why start with voice anyways? It's inefficient and so my question is kind of, do we need a whole new channel in the contact center for, you've got a bot, so because when I have a bot and you have a bot, it's like we have two henchmen that go out on a field of battle to talk to each other, saying, hey, my guy needs this, he wants to solve this problem, and yeah, he's really pissed. I mean, a bot can't negotiate too well, and a bot's only authorized to do certain things. So it seems like it calls for a whole new channel that doesn't start voice, but can escalate to voice, either on one side or the other. I mean, the call center bot may say, well, we really need to talk to your guy, or you may say, this guy really needs to talk to an agent. It seems like maybe there's just a need for a whole new channel.
Yeah, I'm not in a million years going to argue that two computers talking to each other through a lossy medium like voice is a great idea. However, we already have loads of mechanisms for, EDI was invented like 30 years ago to do, this invoicing, purchasing, so if we wanted to write a bot, we could write one in COBOL to, arrive at the right price for some donuts. I think there are some interesting properties about this, doing it through a voice medium thing. One is that you're not forcing the other end to be a bot, so it's the way this stuff is going to get forced on people, because it's the way that you can bring an analog channel like a human being in. And I think there's going to be an arms race in there, but the brilliant property about it is that I can understand it as a human being, so I can hear it, I can see what's going on, I can press stop, I can fix it. So, and I would give you a sort of a kind of an example of why these kind of analog interfaces to technology. While I was somewhere else earlier in the week, someone was trying to show me where this nice place to go and visit was, and he pulled up his Google Maps and showed me a pin, relative to where their office was, and there are about 50 different ways of getting that pin to my phone. Instead, I just took my phone out and took a picture of his phone because, it's analog world, it's tangible, I understand it, and I think inventing another data interchange format for bots to talk to each other is, go ahead. But there are mechanisms that already exist, and they haven't got much traction.
Excellent. What I suggest is thank Rob with another round of applause. We're not waiting for the speaker for an excellent discussion.